On this special episode of the iPhoneography podcast, I'm speaking with Rick Sammon from the Explorers of Life Facebook group, who is a travel photographer and also taught at the Calby One conference coming up. It's Saturday, April 1st, and this is no April Fools. I am doing a special episode today with Mr. Rick Sammon. Hello, Rick. How you doing?
Hey, thank you so much, Greg, for having me. This is a ton of fun. Thanks for being a part of the Explorers of Life smartphone Facebook group. You're an amazing photographer and a cool
Thank you.
instructor, and I'm really happy to know you. So thanks so much. This is going to be a ton of fun.
Yes, it will be a lot of fun, and thanks for coming on. I really do appreciate it. So you've been a busy guy. You've been here and there and little bit everywhere. Most
That sounds like a
notably,
song. That sounds like a Beatles song.
yeah,
Here, there, and everywhere. That's
yeah,
good.
really. But you just had what was it, about a 2-week vacation to Morocco?
Well, I wouldn't call it a vacation, but Susan, I never go on vacation. I'm always working on a project. But yeah, Susan and I spent 2 weeks in Morocco. We started in Casablanca, went to the Blue City, Fez, the sand dunes, the Sahara was my favorite. Being in the Sahara with the sand dunes and the camels and riding on a camel and just experience a different culture. And I must say this, I've been to about 100 countries, and I don't think I've ever been anywhere where I felt this safe.
Is that right, eh? Yeah, that's crazy.
We're walking around. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say my two favorite types of photos that you've showed were the Blue City and, of course, the desert. That Blue City must have been just amazing.
It was amazing. All the houses there and all the stores, they're painted blue. And, getting back to the friendly part of this, we're walking around one morning and I wanted to have a picture of a person, a man or a man or a woman, in the street, and there was nobody around. So I asked the shopkeeper, could you pose? He left his shop and walked like a quarter of a mile to help us out with a specific shot. Then I asked another shopkeeper, could you show us where the art center is? He left the shop open and guided us. We're in the sand dunes. We're in the sand dunes the last day. We're tired, and it's really hard walking up these sand dunes, Greg.
Yeah.
And we're really tired. It's late in the afternoon, and I wanted to get to a spot. And Susan was tired. And I said, okay, let's go back. All of a sudden, a guy comes along in a Jeep, four-wheel drive. Well, it wasn't a Jeep, four-wheel drive vehicle. I think it was a Toyota. And he says, you want me to take you around? I said, how much? He said, $70 for an hour and a half. Well, we gave him a nice tip. But Susan, I, and my friend, we got in his car in the middle of the Sahara, and he drove us around. I told him, I said, I wouldn't do this in Croton-on-Hudson, New York, where I live, get in a car with a stranger and drive around.
Oh, that's right.
Anyway, it's a very religious country. It's a Muslim country. And I felt very, very safe.
Well, that's incredible, because a friend of mine went to a local town about 45 minutes from here, and it's in the summer, it's a beach town, and in the summer it's just booming with people. In the winter, it's like a ghost town. He said he was feeling a little down about not being inspired by anything, so he thought, what, he's just going to go there and start taking pictures, see what he got. He was taking a picture of a street scene, and there was I think it was a coffee shop, and or a bakery or something, and the proprietor was standing in the door with his hands on his hips, wondering, like, okay, what are you doing? Well, he was taking a shot of the street, and it was a wide shot, and this guy eventually came out and expressed his disapproval with him taking these pictures. Well,
yeah,
he was on the other side of the street, but that's small to mid-sized town Canada compared to what you just told me about Morocco. It's amazing. I mean, more of the world needs to be a little bit like Morocco, I think.
I think so. It was amazing. And what's really interesting, and this is the point of the podcast, I'm actually picking these pictures while I'm speaking to you, so I could send them to you to include. What was amazing is that I just took my iPhone. The whole thing was with the iPhone. First time ever. And I had the most fun, I think. And actually, Scott Kelby, who I think he said he thought this is the best work I ever did.
Is that right?
Yeah,
That,
it
that's
it,
incredible.
it
Now
wasn't great.
you talked about this this trip or this type of thing at the Kelby One conference, right?
Yeah, I talked about it at the Kelby One conference, which had I think actually it was the biggest, most successful conference they ever had.
And it was
So
all mobile centric or iPhone centric, right?
it was iPhone centered, and yeah, I
Yeah.
have all these pictures so far, everything we've talked about. So yeah, it was just so much fun, the conference. But traveling with the iPhone, I had a strap, I had a backup battery, which is a real, I didn't need it, but I think the backup battery pack I had gives you like 32 hours.
Oh wow.
Uh, so that and the strap, and Susan Sammon, she's the one who got me into the iPhone a couple of years ago. That, with these lenses here, the wide angle lens, I think I have it written down here somewhere. I think you probably know better than I do. I think it's 13 millimeters. There it
Yes.
is.
Yeah.
That 13 millimeter lens was incredible. I got these shots. And, as you know, with the high efficiency files, it's like always HDR. So
Yeah.
I could
Yeah.
concentrate on composition. I didn't think about ISO. I didn't think about aperture. Didn't think about a shutter speed. I just thought about composition, which
Yeah.
was just so cool that we can do this.
Yeah. And the exposure latitude of these things is amazing. Like I know it's all computational and all that stuff. I
Yeah,
get it,
yeah.
but it's just it takes so much out of the technical part of taking pictures. And like you said, you can concentrate on the composition and on the subject and all that stuff. It's just amazing what they can do.
We took night shots in Marrakech
Hmm.
from top of a rooftop. And I can't even guess what the dynamic range was from the sunset to the deep inside. You can see inside the shops there in the square. My God, it was just amazing.
Yeah, yeah. Now you're just using the native camera app when you shoot?
I'm just using the native camera most of the time. What I'm really into now is this app. Well, for shooting, yeah, but I'm also trying long exposure. Have you even longer?
Yes,
Have you
yes.
Even longer is amazing.
Yeah.
Where you could shoot up to a 24-hour exposure,
Oh
which
yeah.
which is cool. So I was getting these long exposure shots without an ND filter,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Without a self timer. Well, I had the self timer on, without an accessory timer. It was just so much fun, and I think that's why I got into photography in the first place, not to make money. Like most people, to have fun. And I don't think I've ever had as much fun. And actually, a lot of people are saying that. They said, "Man, Rick has a new zest for life."
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'll send a link to you about for the live stream I did yesterday with Shane Mostyn, where we had the developer of Even Longer on the show. And we also had a fellow who uses Even Longer to do hyperlapses, and they're absolutely stunning.
Oh,
And
wow.
so I'll send you that link. We went on for about almost an hour and a half. So if when you got time to sit back and just listen to it, it's really really interesting to hear Mario Tamayak talk about the app that he's developed, and he just does it on the side. He has a day job.
I know that.
Yeah, and do you
Someone
know Mario?
compared, no, I don't know, but someone compared that app to another app backed by like a giant company with like 37 employees. I'm exaggerating a little.
Yeah,
And like you say, he's one guy. And I think this is Eric Kuna and Scott Kelby. They love this app.
yeah. Oh, it is. It's really incredible. There's another app that is so Even Longer does raw,
Yeah.
long exposure. And you know what? I call them long exposure sequences because
Yeah, right.
they're not true long exposures if you get down to the meat and potatoes of it.
Yeah.
But for the sake of arguing, we always call it long exposure.
Yeah.
And there's another app called Re-Expose that is
That's
the
the other one,
only
right?
yeah, that's the only other one that can do raw long exposure. And both of those apps are incredible. I have them both, I use them both. And to ask me which one would be my favorite would be like trying to pick my favorite child. So, I can't even go there. But yeah, Mario does a great job with this Even Longer. And what impresses me the most about it is the fact that you can do these very long, like 6, 8, 10, 12 hour exposures
Yeah,
with hardly using any battery. Like
I know.
the efficiency of the app is incredible.
Well,
Like I'm
it is a
oh, go
little
ahead.
confusing in the beginning. That's what I was just checking. Like I'm setting my camera up for like a long exposure,
Hmm.
in bright sunlight of these waves crashing. And it says my shutter speed's like 1/3200th of a second. I said, what's
Yeah,
going on? But so as you just pointed out, it's a lot of exposures at 1/3200th of a
yeah,
second.
it uses frame averaging. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I believe his app, if you look at your if you look at your image in the Photos app and swipe up to see the data,
Yeah.
I think it tells you how many exposures
Oh, really?
were used at that speed, at that, like using that
I
shutter
have to
speed
look at
combined to make that image.
Oh, I'll check that out at another time. But yeah, I mean, the other app that I used a lot was, don't know if you use it, Dramatic Black and White.
It's a good one. Yes, I do have it.
Dramatic and in dramatic black and white, for your listeners who don't and viewers who don't know about it, you have black and white option, and a lot of variables in that. Then you have dramatic black and white, and you have an infrared. And there's a lot of programs like Nick software. Nick Color
Hmm.
Effects Pro has infrared, and a bunch of others have the infrared. But this infrared app, I thought, was the best. I'm going to find that picture so you can include it. But the infrared is just so cool.
Yeah, yeah. There's so many good apps to use, but so while traveling, how did you find carrying just the iPhone and whatever little bit of kit that you had with you compared to carrying, the big Sony gear and stuff?
Well, it was so freeing.
Yeah,
We're walking around the Blue City. I have this rather than a backpack and a pro looking camera. I don't look like a pro,
you're right.
right?
Yeah, yeah,
And that changed everything. That changes everything in street photography.
yeah, it sure
So
does.
I didn't look like a pro. So I was less intimidating and I felt less intimidated. So it was working like both ways. So again, I felt free. I felt more relaxed. I felt like, I still ask people if I could take their picture, especially in a Muslim country, which
Hmm.
is very, very important. And respecting the subject, whether it's a person or if you're taking a wildlife photograph or if you're out, hiking somewhere, respecting the environment, all this stuff is
Yeah.
very,
Oh, yeah.
very important. Respect is important, but it was so nice to not, Susan, who we've traveled to about 100 countries together. She saw I just had my computer bag. She said, it always looks like you're missing something. And, because I
Yeah.
usually have my big bag,
Yeah.
but I'm going to Antarctica in October.
Hmm.
I'm just taking my iPhone,
Oh, wow.
the new iPhone, the
Yeah.
15,
Yeah.
because I hope you may have heard something different, but I heard it's going to have a 6X. I was hoping it's going to have a 10X,
I
but
just read yesterday that it could have a 10X.
really, if it has a
Yes.
10X, well, either way, I'm going to
Yeah.
only take my and I've been to Antarctica before with the long lenses and this and that. And I might miss. I looked at my shots. 95% of my shots were taken with the wide angle lens or a medium telephoto, because in
Hmm.
Antarctica, you can get, as close as you are to the mic.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're not allowed to approach the animals closer than 15 feet, but that doesn't mean they can't come up to you. So the
Yeah.
penguins, come this close. And I'm going to Tanzania in September. I think in September, and if that late September, if that iPhone comes out with the 10X, that's all I'm going to take.
Yeah. Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, it's so the quality of the raw files that you could crop in, and even though I'm not a fan usually of big cropping in,
Yeah.
uh, with the 10X zoom, I mean, I'm dreaming, I'm hoping. So if Apple's listening to us, I hope.
Yeah. Yeah. It sure would be nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's probably the biggest complaint about serious iPhone photographers is the lack of the zoom.
Yeah.
I know my co-host Dave Podner goes on about that and has gone on about that a few times, and I don't blame him one bit because he's taken, like, he lives in Pittsburgh, and for
Yeah.
him to get a shot across the big river, I mean, if he zooms in like 15 times, it's all digital, and
Yeah.
I mean, he's the first one to admit it doesn't look great.
Doesn't the
But
Galaxy or one of those phones have like a 10x zoom?
they have a 100 times. Now it's I think it's 10 times optical, but then the rest of it's digital. And there's been a lot of chatter on the internet about everybody with those phones is taking moonshots, but Samsung is basically using AI and detail enhancement and all this stuff to make the details of the moon show up better. So the camera itself is not really capturing the moon. It's it's all done with it's not an overlay per se, but it's AI generated. So there's been a lot of discussion about that in the press and whatnot. So but the zoom that it does, say, if you're taking a photo of a bird in a tree and you can zoom in
Yeah.
on it, it's pretty impressive. It
Yeah,
is
it
pretty
is.
good.
And what do you think this is going to be like in 5 years? It's just, I mean, actually, we were in Morocco, like you mentioned, for 2 weeks. My guess is we saw less than maybe 7 people with big cameras.
Yeah, I think
That's amazing.
I think more and more people are traveling with a smartphone these days.
Yeah.
I'm not a traveler. I'm kind
Mhm.
of a homebody, but I mean, I watch and I listen to a lot of things about photography, and and I know there's a lot of travelers or people that do travel with their cameras and their phones and stuff. But I mean, 15 years ago, to even 10 years ago, everybody was lugging the big bags down around with their big lenses and all that stuff. Now,
Yeah.
like you say, it's barely out there now. There's so few people lugging all the gear around because these things are getting so good.
They're so good, and they're so much fun.
Yeah. So the conference, it was all virtual, right? So you just did it from home. Is that how it went?
Yeah, I did it from home, and Kelby One folks did it from down there, and it was so much fun. They started this in the during the pandemic,
Right.
and it took off. But and they have Lightroom conferences in Photoshop. But this was, I think, it's telling you something about how popular the iPhone is or the smartphone is. Well, this was the iPhone only, but it was so much. The comments, people were blown away by all the pictures. My friend Glenn Dewis
Yeah, I know
in
Glenn.
England.
Yeah.
Yeah, he makes, you should have him on. You might want to have him on the show. He's amazing.
Yeah.
Um, and he was on Frederick Van Johnson, all the big names that
Mm-hmm.
I've followed for years who use big cameras, now using the iPhone and getting amazing results.
Yeah. So that begs the question, what is it that attracts all these, professionals to shoot with the iPhone a little more? Like yourself and Frederick and Glenn and
Glenn.
Scott Kelby, all these big time photographers, to me anyway, like you guys are my heroes. Um, are all starting to shoot with the iPhone now. So what was it that attracted you to using the iPhone? I know Susan used it for
Yeah.
years before you did, but um, was it Susan that kind of got you into it,
Well,
or?
she got me into it. Yeah, I would be teaching a workshop like on the Oregon coast, and people would set up their tripods and their big cameras, and I'd be, pontificating, you do this, do that, shutter
Mhm.
speed, aperture, this, and then she'd take a picture and be processing it right there in distressed FX or dramatic black and white or Snapseed, and people go over there and say, "Wow, this is amazing." So I
Yeah.
think it's the speed and the ease and the quality and the fun, that you could see the results. Scott Kelby told a story at this conference, and it's true. He tells it a lot whenever I think every time he teaches an iPhone conference. We were in China together. I was teaching a workshop with Scott. We're both teaching, and Susan was there. We get up early one morning. You've seen pictures of those cormorant fishermen, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
With the lanterns. So we
Hmm.
we set up our gear and everything, and we haven't even taken a picture. And Susan has taken a picture in low light processed it and put it on Instagram. Well, we're all, doing this. And Scott says, this is when Scott Kelby, realized that, this is really a really cool thing. But the
Yeah.
quality, what do we want? We want ease. We want fun. We want our pictures to look good.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why Scott said, that this is the best work he's ever seen for me, because I was really driven, by the way, to get good
Yeah.
images. This is the first time I'm ever going on a trip with only the iPhone. So I was driven. I did spend a lot of time processing the images, but the computational photography is just mind-blowing.
Yeah, it is. I wrote a piece on my website about the computational stuff, and I called it "The Gap is Getting Smaller," and it was about the portrait mode in the iPhone and how you can change. You can play around with the so-called depth of field and the the blur and stuff like that. And that was going back to, I think, January of 2018. So I mean, this stuff's been going on for quite some time, but the image quality of the cameras themselves has just been getting better and better and better. And I mean, I wouldn't hesitate to shoot a wedding with an iPhone now. I mean, I took pictures at my son's wedding a few years ago with a 10s Max, and I hired a professional photographer to do the event. So just for kicks, we're standing there and we're comparing images. She says, "How did you get that,
Right.
that exposure latitude like that?" And I said, "Oh, I don't know. That's just what it does."
Well, also with the iPhone, when the portrait mode like you were talking about, I do the one where you have stage lighting, where you make the background black, and people are blown away. That originally wasn't that good. Now it's pretty good.
Yeah. The segmentation mask is really getting better. That's that's the what picks out the subject, and then you can black out the background, and yeah, it's really good.
I
Have you
think
heard of the
maybe.
app?
Go ahead.
Have you heard of the app called Focus?
Yeah, Susan has that where you can
Yeah.
change. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's amazing.
it's fun to play around with.
Changing the aperture in the background.
Yeah.
Well, you said I think we probably mentioned fun about 32 times so far, in
Yeah.
this recording, and it is fun. And maybe I think having a bigger screen, makes it more fun. Maybe you're more in touch. You're not squinting through this or on the back of a mirrorless or digital SLR. Maybe the screen's like kind of small. This is just I think it's very rewarding. Like it's instant. Even though digital photography is instant gratification, this is like instant gratification times whatever. Because I think because of the apps, and you start thinking. I think you start thinking differently. Yes, we think
Yeah.
about, and when 10 years ago when I was in Cuba or something, I take a picture. Okay, this is what I could do in Lightroom and Photoshop, thinking about that during, but now because it's at your fingertips, I think it's just so much fun.
Yeah. I knew when Scott wrote his book about iPhone
Yeah.
photography, and I got it as soon as it was available. I knew that when he wrote that book, there was going to be a lot more coverage about the iPhone from his company, and
Yeah.
and the conference speaks for itself. So I should have maybe done this at the beginning of the show, but for those of my listeners who may not know who you are, who is Rick Sammon? And I generally try to get people to do it in like a tweet.
Yeah. Well, right. Well, I'm a proud dad first and foremost. My son's he landed the dream job of his life. He's teaching finance at Harvard Business School.
Oh,
So
wow. Good.
this is my big accomplishment, our big accomplishment. We put a lot into raising him, and he's doing great. So other than
Excellent.
that, you could see, those of you who are seeing this, the video version of this, you can see my guitars in the back. I actually play guitar way more than I take pictures.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, I have on my website. The first thing you see is Rick's Music Room, where I have free guitar and piano lessons. And on Friday, this is going beyond the tweet, sorry, but on
That's
Fridays
okay.
I post like a jumpstart your weekend thing where I put together a musical piece with some energy in it. So yeah, I would say photography is part of my life.
Yeah. Yeah, and you were with the Explorers of Light group with Canon before, correct?
I was, but I upped my game to Sony. So now I'm
Yeah.
shooting with the A1, and that's Sony 200 to 600. You know, people think, oh, Rick so into the iPhone is giving up the other stuff. No, uh, I was just down in Florida photographing birds with the A1 and the Sony 200 to 600, and the eye tracking, how this follows the subject. So it locks on the subject, and if the bird's flying around, you don't have to do anything. It just follows it. It's kind of
That's
like cheating,
amazing.
especially if you get 30 frames per second. But in addition to that, the dynamic range of the Sony sensor, and I think the iPhone or the next iPhone is going to have the Sony sensor in it.
Oh, it's
So
been using
Sony,
Sony sensors for years.
yeah, so Sony is
Yeah.
really an amazing company. So yeah, I'm loving the A1 and the 200 to 600. I was using the 100 to 500, but that extra 100 millimeters in wildlife photography is really cool, and you don't need a 1.4x converter.
Yeah, yeah, because that would just kind of
Yeah,
take
it
some
lowers
light
the
out of
light.
it.
Yeah, and you have to put something on and everything. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. So what's next for Rick Salmon with his iPhone?
We're going to, there's a very famous, iconic place in New York City called Dumbo Pier. Probably seen pictures, all the pilings in the foreground and the city in the back.
I
And
believe I have, yeah.
actually, you probably can't see it, but it's the centerpiece behind
Okay.
me on my wall there. Is very
Yeah.
small. I'm challenging, and that was a very popular picture, one of my best sellers. I'm challenging myself to get a better picture with the iPhone.
Ah,
So
okay.
we're going there. We're going there next week, and then with talk about even longer. We're going to Niagara Falls,
Oh,
and we're going to
nice.
try doing Niagara Falls at night with even
Mm-hmm.
longer. So other than that, I'm learning some new songs on guitar, on bass guitar. I play bass mostly, and it's all good.
Yeah, good. Uh, so Susan, like she's an avid iPhone photographer. Has she got anything that she does other than personal stuff or
Well,
anything?
she actually was one of the instructors
Oh,
on the
that's
Kelvin
right.
one. She
Yeah.
was we've done class. We did a business class before, which is a takeoff of our book, How to Make Money While You're Sleeping, which is one of my best-selling books. But
Hmm.
anyway, we did a business class last year. Yeah, last year or early. Yeah, last year we did a business class, but she had her own solo class on the Kelvin One conference on apps, her 7 favorite apps. And
Oh,
class
nice.
was super popular. And I was glued to the screen while she was doing it because I
Yeah.
wanted.
Any insight as to what her favorites could be?
Well, it's the same ones that I have because she told me about them. And just by the way, just a quick tip: I have all my photo apps in a folder.
Yeah,
Rather,
yeah.
so she loves Distressed FX,
Hmm.
Light Leaps. Have you tried Light Leaps?
Yeah.
Light Leaps is really cool. We could put in all different light beams and stuff. Snapseed she loves. Dramatic black and white. Lens flare is fun. Dark room. I forget the other ones, but those are some of her favorites.
Have you looked at lens distortion?
No.
It's a good one. You can actually have a lot of fun with it. You could put moon, planets, all that stuff in the sky. There's different, like I have the paid version. I don't know what you get for the free version, but um there's all kinds of things you could do. Gosh, may I don't know if there's a reflect part. I know there's an app called
Lens
Reflect.
distortion.
I think it's called lens distortion.
I'm looking for an app that makes like a fisheye shot. I don't want to buy one of those cheap fisheye lenses that destroys your image.
Right, yeah.
I know how to do it in Photoshop with Warp, but I'm
Mhm.
looking for an app that does that.
Yeah, so lens distortions. It has let's see here. Gosh, some of these apps I'm ashamed to say I have probably over 50 photography related apps on my phone.
Oh, I wouldn't be ashamed. I'd be
But
proud.
the shameful part is I don't use them enough to really remember everything about them. Oh gosh, there's a lot of different
Well,
things
that's
you
the
can do.
thing. It's like playing the piano, like playing the guitar. You have to do it a lot
Yeah,
if you want to get good at it.
yeah, um, yeah. I don't know. It's a good one anyway. Have a look at it. It's definitely worth it to take a few minutes and look it up. And um, gosh, I don't know. So anything else you want to plug before we call it a day here?
No, just if folks want to get inspired, the Facebook group that you're a part of, Explorers of Life, you could just find it. Just type in Rick Sammon, Explorers of Life,
Well, I
Facebook.
have an actual link to it in the show
Oh
notes
yeah,
for every
yeah.
podcast. So
We have more than 1,000 people. I just gave everyone an assignment this week to do a silhouettes, so
yeah.
that should be fun. Using one of my Morocco pictures. So I just want to thank you so much for having me. I always love talking about photography and the
Mhm.
iPhone, and hopefully I'll get to meet you someday in person.
Yeah, that would be cool. Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. And again, folks, this is not April Fools. This is Rick Salmon live in person. And I've been kind of watching your work for years. Back, I used to shoot a Canon DSLR, and
Mhm.
it was always inspiring to see what you do. And now with your iPhone stuff, it's just all like starting fresh again with the inspiration. And I do really enjoy the group. When did you start that? It was about what, 4 months ago?
I started it on New Year's Eve.
Oh, okay. Well, that's
Yep,
a good.
I started on New Year's Eve, and I said, okay, just gonna have some fun with this one, and it turned into a ton of fun.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It sure is. A lot of great people on there, and I've always been of the mind, you know, teach what you know and learn what you don't. So whenever someone
Right.
on there needs help with something, if I know anything about it, I'm always
Yeah. No,
glad to
thank you
offer
so
up some
much for
help.
chiming in. Your
Yeah.
posts are very
So
popular.
all right. Well, thanks, Rick. Really appreciate it, and just can't wait to see what you do next.
Well, thank you so much, my friend. Hang in there.
Okay. Take care.